I'm guessing you guys are here today because you have at least some interest in starting a small business or you already own one. How many people in the room already have a business? How many people in the room would like to start a business? Fantastic. All right, you're in the right place. So congratulations to you on that. I'll give you a little bit about me so you have a sense of kind of how I came into the world of franchising myself. In my previous life, I used to work in the corporate world. For 7 years, I was with a very small company that you guys may have heard about called Verizon, up the road. I was with them for 7 years. Everything you hear about the corporate life is true. I was on that hamster wheel. I was working 70 to 80-hour weeks. I had just had my child. I barely saw my husband. My life was out of whack. I made good money, but at the end of the day, I was deeply unhappy. I think some of you might be able to relate to that. In April of 2015, as part of a series of layoffs that the company had been having, my position got eliminated. When my boss gave me that news, I got up and I hugged him. I think that's the first and the last time the man ever got a hug for giving someone a pink slip, right? For me, it wasn't even a blessing in disguise. It was a straight up blessing. It really was. So at that point, I started to think very intentionally about what the next steps of my life looked like. I eventually found FranNet, the franchise that I am with now. And I gravitated towards franchising because over the last 15 years of my life in the corporate world, I realized that I was never meant to be an employee. I'd started an organization. This would be my job description by the time I left. This was my job description. I added stuff because I wanted to do it, right? That's an entrepreneurial trait. Some of you might have it. So in thinking about it, I knew I wanted to go into business for myself, but I also know myself well enough to know what my weaknesses are and what I'm not good at. And those things that we are not good at doesn't mean we can ignore them and still have our businesses thrive. It just means that our businesses pay a price for that because we are not skilled in that particular thing, whatever that thing is. Well, franchises take that issue off of the table, and we'll talk about why. So just to set the table, that's a little bit about me and how I came into the world of franchising. All right, so today, what we will do, as the title says, if you are a small business or you're looking to start a business, what are some of the lessons you can take from the world of franchising? Franchising has been an extremely successful industry for the last 20, 30 more years. You see franchises everywhere. There are reasons why that is the case. And we'll talk about some of the things that franchises have put into place systematically that perhaps you can use and put into your small business and see if that works for you. Does that sound good? Mm-hmm. Fantastic. All right. So,
Faizun,
yes.
that's a clicker right there.
Right at the top.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Click the right button.
All right. So, a little bit about FranNet. I am what's known as a franchise consultant, and the industry that I am in is called franchise consulting. It's just a fancy way of saying I work with people who are looking to start a franchise business, and I help them find their perfect fit franchise at which they're going to be rock stars. What does that mean? We'll talk a little bit more about that, right? FranNet started the industry called franchise consulting 30 years ago. This is our 30th year anniversary. Before the company started in 1987, there was no such thing as franchise consulting. We are the oldest organization in the world that does what we do, right? So there are 30 years of expertise and thousands of clients that we have successfully placed in franchises around the country and around the world. For those of you who have used the SBA, the Small Business Administration, we are the only franchise consulting organization in the industry that is partnered with the SBA. None of our competitors are. So we work with the SBA and its business counseling partners, the SBDC, Charles and Felipe. You guys have heard of that, right? The Women's Business Centers and SCORE. These are the three partners that the SBA has. Any and all materials on franchising that you will see on the SBA's website are our materials, right? I take a lot of pride in saying that because there's a reason why the SBA has done what it's done. Because our materials are educational. They provide a very rational search process for people looking to start, buy a franchise. All right? And my services are of no cost to my clients. So I work exactly like an executive headhunter. I have companies, in this case franchises, and I have clients who are employees, if you will, and through a proprietary matching and assessment process, we bring the two together. All right? Any questions? All right. There's a lot that I could discuss with you guys today. I thought these 5 would be the most salient. And if you are already running a small business, I think you will get the most value from this. So we'll start off with why and how do you systematize the processes you have in place for your business? Why is that important? We're going to next look at, when you think about outsourcing, what do you outsource? Which functions of your business do you outsource? What do you outsource? We'll then look at franchises, the companies that I work with. What is the process, what is the methodology they use to evaluate and look at market opportunities? Whatever business you're running, you are pursuing a particular opportunity, aren't you? You've looked at the marketplace and you've said, this I think is a good place for me. I think I can make some money, I can provide a service, I can create some sort of product, etc. Right? How do franchisors evaluate market opportunities? And you might be able to glean some lessons for how you might do the same when you are looking at your particular markets. We'll then look at, in the last 10 years, what are some of the trends we have seen in the world of franchising? Again, that can translate into if you're looking to start a business or you already have one. And then we'll end with this. As with anything else, a franchise isn't for everyone, right? It's not the silver bullet. So when does it make sense for you to go the independent route, put up your shingles and call it a day, or to go the franchising route? Is there anything else you guys would like me to cover?
Just one quick question.
Yes, sir.
Do you guys assist companies who want to become franchisors themselves?
Yes, we do. Yes. 3 years ago, FranNet started, it's one of the company-owned subsidiaries, it's called Pinnacle Development, and they will take businesses that are at that stage that are ready to go national and go to market, and they help with the back-end operations. How do you scale it up and make it become a national brand? So we do that as well. I don't do that. I work with individuals, but we do have a subsidiary that does that.
So you eventually, if you're considering a franchise, would you eventually have to give up your overall percentage of your company, if there's any at all?
So you mean when you become a franchisee?
Yeah.
Yes. So typically, have you heard of the term royalty? Yes. So a royalty is a certain amount of your profits that you are going to be giving back to the franchisor every single month. And we'll talk about why you do that. You're giving the money, but what are you getting in turn for that? So yes, yes. Other questions? Okay. So this is where we'll begin. How and why do you need to systematize the processes you have in your business? All right, if you're a business owner or you want to start a business, you should have read one of these 3 books. How many have read all 3? Only Charles. Okay. How many have read 2? All right. How many have read 1? All right. So, all of these books, what do they? So, I'm going to pick on someone that I don't know. This lovely gentleman here. Which one have you read?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay. And give us a very high overview of what exactly is the book trying to get at.
I think it just gives a market scale of how, in comparison, like large companies and startups, how they balance off each other. In that sense, that's what I got out of it, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And what eventually Kiyosaki tries to get at is, when you look at these small startups, when you look at these large companies and all the companies in between, the most successful ones are the ones that have put certain systems in place. Systematization. All 3 books talk about that. There are many, many, many other books on systematization, but there are none on franchises. Yet, a franchise is all about the system. So I'll tell clients, don't worry about if you should be looking at a franchise that offers a product or offers a service. We're not there yet. What you need to look at is how robust are that particular franchise's systems. because that will determine how successful the business model is and ultimately determine how much money you're going to be making if you become a franchisee in that model. So, right, the cash flow quadrant. So for those of you who have read that book, Kiyosaki talks about the cash flow quadrant. This is an employee, a self-employed, a business owner, and somebody who's an investor. One of the most striking things about this quadrant, this is why it's important for you guys, one of the most striking things is when you are on the left side of the quadrant, you are overwhelmed and stressed out and busy. Why?
Trading dollars for hours or hours for dollars.
Frank hit the nail on the head. In addition to the fact that you're probably the only one in the business. You're the owner, you're the CEO, but you're also the janitor and everything else in between, right? The trick is, this is where we need to be, on the right side of the quadrant. You either want to be a business owner. Have you ever heard of the phrase, you want to work on your business and not in your business? Yeah. You want to be a business owner, or you want to be an investor. What is different about this from the left side of the quadrant? This is when you start to do what? Employ other people who can work for you. This is going to lead us into, and by the way, for those who are self-employed and who are employees, they never even get close to being financially independent when they retire. Not my numbers, Census Bureau numbers. Scary stats, right? So, again, think of where you are, think of potentially where you want to be, and the gap between where you are and where you want to be, that's what we're going to focus on today. All right? So, how and why do you need to systematize processes that are core and processes that are called non-core? Franchises, you'll hear me say this word over the course of our seminar today. A franchise is all about the systems. All about the systems. Very importantly, it's an approach to starting and staying in business. What does that mean? I know for Virginia, you can go to the Online Corporation Commission. You can pay, I think, $75, and you can incorporate and start a business in about 25 minutes. Anyone can start a business. The more important piece is, can you stay in business for the long haul, right? Franchises offer you a playbook. They offer you a manual. They offer you a system for not only starting a business, but for staying in business for the long haul, because that's when you're going to start to make the money. These are some of the key systems that franchises have in place. When I give particular franchises to clients that I work with, these are the systems that I look at. I want to understand, if you're a business that does IT, you provide IT services to other small businesses, what kind of marketing do you do? Does your franchisor support you in the marketing campaigns that you run? Do they provide the materials? Do they provide the collateral? Do you have to come up with it on your own? What do they do? If you are a business that focuses on, let's say you run a company that provides floor coverings. There are franchises that do that, right? You are in a sales business. You're reaching out to customers, you're making the sales. Do you have a process for that? Do you have employees who their job each day, every day, day in and day out, is to reach out to customers? Or is it you, the business owner? Operations. The key pieces, the heart of the business. What are the key functions you need to be engaged in for the operations piece of your business? Is your franchisor helping you do some of that? Finally, accounting. For me, for my business, I need to carry something that's called a liability insurance. However, every year, I don't spend hours and hours researching and looking up providers who can give me that insurance. FranNet takes care of that. And oh, by the way, franchises, because of their purchasing power, they're able to get various products and services at prices way cheaper than I, as an individual, would be able to. It saves me time, it saves me money. They take care of that for me. So the question that you asked, the royalty, this is what your royalty pays for. So anytime you look at a business, anytime you look at a franchise, you want to find out what are those functions of your business that your franchisor is taking care of. Typically, these are what are known as back-end functions. And typically, these are considered non-core functions. So remember this? Core, non-core. The franchisors, the good ones at least, not everybody does this, the good ones, they should be taking care of your non-core functions. So here's the point. If you are an IT business,
Wait, those are non-core functions?
some of them are,
Sales?
some of them are. So marketing, for example, I'll give you an example. You're an IT business, okay? One of your key responsibilities as the business owner, Felipe, you are supposed to go out and about into your community and talk to other business owners about what you offer. That's one of the key things you need to do. You're an IT business. Should you instead be spending a half day every month updating your website? Is that a core function for you? Is that directly bringing customers and clients through the door? And the distinction here is, as the business owner, you should only be focused on core functions of the business. The non-core, they need to be outsourced. Absolutely, every single time. This is why most small business owners who are not franchises are overwhelmed, because they're trying to take care of every single thing themselves. It doesn't work. You get burnt out very fast, right? So yes, for purposes of different business, some of these functions can be considered core, others would be non-core. It's not straight across the board. So, what do you outsource, right? In the context of your own small business, try and make that determination. Another piece of the outsourcing is, if you typically have employees, even one, what are the things that you're giving your employees to do? Typically, they should be non-core functions. There are businesses where you are considered to be the face of the business, and you need to be out and about in the community attending Chamber of Commerce events and other events where you say, "Hi Dennis, I'm Faizun. I'm the owner of FranNet. He needs to see my face." It should not be your employee doing that, right? Your employee should be updating the website if that's a capability that they have, right? Questions?
How would
Yes.
you define core and non-core? I mean, just in general. Core means we're not going to be able to stay open tomorrow if we don't do it, or
Core business processes or core functions of a business owner are those functions that you perform on a daily basis that directly leads to your bottom line. Those are actions that make those customers or those clients walk through the door. It's that sales call that you just closed, depending on what your business is. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, do you have a checklist of recommendations for core functions versus non-core functions
Ooh.
that should be outsourced?
Ooh, I bet you if you Google that, you would find it. I don't have one. But that's a really fantastic question. I should work on something like that, shouldn't I, Charles?
Yeah.
That'd be a handy dandy handout. Okay, thank you. Good idea.
Thank you.
Good idea.
So is it that per statistic? I'm listening to you, and because it's relating to me, because I do operations and event planning. 75% is doing event planning for the federal government. But I find myself getting very tired at the end of the evening now because I'm doing everything, because there's only two of us right now. We're getting the RFPs, but when I spend whole day doing RFPs and stuff like that, and then I have to check in accounting, I have to check everything else, it's just getting to be so much. And sometimes, things. So I'm just saying, so when you say that your business will not work if you don't outsource some of these non-core functions, that's what you.
So I get that. I hear that a lot. Have you guys heard of the phrase a personal board of advisors? Having a personal board of advisors? So here's what I would suggest for you, given the kind of business that you have. If you don't already, start to form trusted relationships with a CPA, with an accountant, with a bookkeeper, with a business banker. For your particular business, you do PR and events. Perhaps you have a stable of 3 to 5 people who are your go-to people when you're trying to put together a big event. The point is, with a franchise, you have a team of people who support you on your non-core functions. That's the royalty that you're paying them. When you have your own business that is not a franchise, is there something similar that you can put in place? A lot of times, small business owners don't want to outsource because it's money going out of their pockets. But that's a little bit of a short-sighted determination to be making. right? A lot of people will say, oh, no, I can update my website. I actually did that. The very first business I owned. Guess what? The business does not exist anymore. I've been on both sides of the equation, right? So that could be a way for you to start to get resources where you're not having to duplicate yourself and be everywhere all at the same time. Yeah. Other questions? Okay. So let's move now a little bit into when franchises look at market opportunities, how do they evaluate them? And are there ways that you can start to do the same, whether or not you own a small business or you are looking to start one? So I want to ask you guys, what do you think? Is it best to start a business in an industry that has zero competition? No? Why? Why do you want competition? That's not good, right? What's that?
They prove people are buying it.
More importantly, is there any industry that exists that has zero competition? Right? So let's dig a little deeper into this. Okay, let's talk about what is arguably the most well-known example in franchising. How many people have heard of McDonald's? Yes, all right. So here's the reality. Mickey D's started in the 1940s. And when they began, there was a burger joint on every corner. Contrary to what a lot of people think. These were mom and pop burger shops, but there was a joint on almost every corner. This was the 1940s. In the last 60, 65, do the math for me, right? Years, they have now dominated the market. McDonald's, along with a handful of other fast food chains, 95% of the fast food market in the United States are franchises. About 5% are mom and pop shops that do fast food. So what was so unique about this? Did McDonald's know something that we did not? Here's what they did. They looked at the mom and pop shops, right? And they said, has anybody really looked at where do we site the most optimal storefront? What is the best real estate for us to locate our shop on? Have people looked at health and hygiene standards? It varied, right? You went to one place, it was one way. You went to another, it was another. When you walked into one shop, this was the size of the patties. You walked into the shop at the next corner, this was the size of the patties, right? They came in and what did they do? They standardized systems, right? So if you go to a McDonald's in DC, you go to one in the San Francisco Bay Area, or you go to one in Idaho, guess what? The thickness and the length of your fries are exactly the same. They're systematized, right? What does that do? It reduces costs. It increases efficiency because you know what to expect. What does it also do? It also allows you to hire employees because it is training that can be replicated because it's the same across the board, wherever you go. It's not one thing here and one thing in another place, right? This is the truth about franchising. Franchising accelerates market dominance over local competitors. So here's the question that I ask you, all of you. The business that you're in, the business that you're in, the business that you're in, that you guys are in, whatever it is you're doing, are you effectively taking market share away from your competitors? Sometimes. Why not all the time?
I need to grow.
You need to grow.
And I need to systematize.
You need to systematize, right? So think of the McDonald's example and ask yourself this. You're growing, you're making more money when you take that piece of market share away from your competitors. At a very bottom line level, that's what's happening. So this first one was market dominance. That is one of the key characteristics of a franchise. Franchises, by their very nature, by the way in which they're organized as business models, they're intended to take a disproportionate amount of market share away from its competitors. This is why within a 60, 70-year span, only 5% of fast food businesses are standalone businesses and the rest have become franchised. So, market dominance. Can you do the same in whatever industry that you're in? Can you do the same? Second piece, let's talk about market share. A little bit different from market dominance. The example I like to use is hair care. This happens to be one of my own personal favorites. Why? Because hair care is in an industry that is also known as recession resistant. And we'll talk more about that in the presentation. Recession resistant, meaning the economy is going up, the economy is going down. Guess what is growing? Your hair and my hair, unless you're my husband and you're bald, and then it doesn't matter. Okay? Hair care. Compared to a McDonald's, compared to a fast food, they have not been around that long in terms of being franchised. They only started franchising in the 1980s. So they've been around 25, 30 years or so. Okay? Only about 30% are consolidated. Does anybody know what consolidated means? Consolidated means you have a system in place, you have a process in place. There's standardization across the board. If you're a mom and pop, you're not consolidated. You don't have a system in place. You make up your rules and systems as you go along, typically, right? Even though they started in the 80s, every year, hair care franchises continue to take about 2% of the market share. It doesn't sound like a whole lot, right? But in absolute numbers, it's a whole lot. It's a whole lot. They're growing very fast.
Can you give an example of
Yes.
what a hair care
Yes.
company is that you're referring to here?
Absolutely. Have you guys heard of Supercuts?
Yes, okay.
Have you guys heard of Sports Clips? That's geared for men. So Sports Clips are for men. Have you guys heard of Cookie Cutters? Those are haircuts for children.
Oh, that's cute.
Okay? Haircuts, the haircut industry is absolutely astonishing. The margins are pretty unbelievable for a product that's, for a service that's so unglamorous, right? You're cutting hair. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is it's a need to have. It's not a nice to have, particularly for children, right? You need to get your hair trimmed every so often, etc., etc. This is what I just mentioned. This is why. When you look at basic industries, so a basic industry was fast food or food. A second basic industry is hair care. When you look at basic industries, franchises take those industries and they blow them out of the water in terms of the market share that they're able to get because of the systems that they put in place. Again, this is my question for you guys. With your business, are you being successfully able to take market share away from your competitors? How? If not, why not? Are there ways in which you can do so? Think about, a good way to think about it would be, whatever industry you're in, is there a franchise that provides what you provide? And you might want to take a look at them and see what they do, because they're doing it very successfully, in all likelihood. Questions?
I was just about to ask you that.
Yes.
Being in PR and event planning, are there a lot of franchises in my field? Because I've done a little homework and
I don't know. To my knowledge, I don't think there is. Remember, we're talking about basic industries. That is where franchises do the best.
right.
That's more of a niche kind of thing, if you will.
But there is a possibility that I can be a that I can start a franchise.
You
as
could,
far as
potentially.
potential.
Potentially. Now, there are certain things, as Felipe was asking me, so our subsidiary, Pinnacle, there are certain things you would need to have in place. If it's for your particular industry, I'm not sure what the metrics would be, right? But you would need to show proof of concept. You would need to, you've had X dollars in sales, in annual sales for the last X years, etc., to be able to say this is a viable concept, it can be scaled up nationally. Okay. This is what we've been talking about. The most successful franchises you will find in the US and in fact in the world, they emerge in basic industries, very, very, very basic industries that have lots and lots and lots of competition. But here's the kicker. It's a lot of competition, but it's an industry that is extremely fragmented, meaning they're not consolidated, meaning people are doing their own thing, right? There were a lot of people, there's still a lot of people cutting hair, right? Unless you go to a Bubbles or like the ones that I just mentioned, there still are a lot of salons, right, that are independently owned. But do you really know what to expect when you walk into one? It's kind of like McDonald's, right? You know the food sucks, Your child is screaming in the car, and you end up going to McDonald's. Why? As sucky as the food is, you still know what to expect. Don't underestimate the human psychology of being used to knowing what to expect. That's a huge driver, if you think about it. We like to know what we're walking into, right? You go into a little strip mall, there's a bunch of restaurants. You look at the Thai, you look at the Chinese, and you look at Panera, right? You kind of go into the one that you're most used to, that you have a sense of what you are going to get when you walk in there. Standardization. Ask yourself this. How effective are your business systems? Are there ways? Can you create a personal board of advisors that help you, in effect, replicate yourself so that you don't have to be in 10 different places at the same time every single day? There's only one of you. How do you maximize all of you every single day? And it should not be on wasting time on non-core processes that don't bring you money, that don't help you grow your business. Those are not the things you should be doing. Questions? Okay. How many of you have ever said that to yourself? My biggest competitive advantage is that I have the cheapest product or service. You have. Anyone else? Why? Why did you think that was a good way to distinguish yourself from the others?
Because my company was just established in 2015, so I'm new into the market. So I have to come in. I can't come in on the top of the line. I have to, prove myself and introduce my business into there. So I can't come up. When I bid on RFPs, I have to come in at the lowest prices. Although I provide a good thing of business integration when I do convention and trade shows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I know I have a solid product, but at the same time, there are bigger companies that have been in years and have that, stability.
Name recognition, the brand, absolutely. That's a very good point. That's one of the reasons why a lot of business owners, they compete on the lowest price. Unfortunately, what happens when you start out competing on the lowest price? Can you go back up? How easy is it to go back up?
It's hard.
Right? So I want you to think about it this way. Franchises never offer you bottom of the barrel prices on anything. It's always middle of the road, price and quality wise. Why? Because they're looking to target the middle market. The middle market is the largest segment of the population who can be viable customers for you, right? You have the lower end of the market and you have the really high end of the market. But the populations are not as large. You want the middle market. They don't go for rock bottom prices. Once you do that, you've stepped on a slippery slope and it's a race to the bottom. So you have to be very careful about that, right?
But why is it that the standardized process in the government, like when you do proposals and stuff like that, they normally, when you go on the electronic on the site, they normally says they are going to choose the lowest.
Government contract.
Government contracting.
It's different than selling.
Oh,
to,
okay.
Yeah,
public
that's a
or
very
business.
different world.
Different. Okay.
It's a very different world. Yeah.
Just asking to find
No,
out.
this is, that's fantastic, absolutely. Typically you will find it's a race to the bottom,
Yeah.
and no one wins. When your competitive advantage, the one thing that you have that really makes you stand out from the crowd out there, is that you have the cheapest price. Not such a great strategy. We'll talk about why. Think of this. Numbers don't lie. In the US today, about 10 to 12% of all businesses are franchises. Only. They don't even make up 15-20%. Only between 10 to 12. And yet, they take in fully half of the retail and service dollars annually in the US. Yes?
My question kind of goes back to the last slide, but I wanted to see your thoughts on, because I've heard a different perspective on where to price, and I think it not only depends on your industry as far as federal and private, but also what your services are, what you're offering. I kind of feel like if it's a service, you might want to be either the lowest or the highest.
What do you do?
And I take groups abroad. I do international education and service learning.
Okay.
So like in my industry, you're either gonna want a luxury trip or you're gonna want something, economy. I don't know, I've just read that you should either be the highest or the lowest.
So we have another travel person in the room. Do you know the answer to that?
Can you restate your question, because you said that, but then you said that you did
I'm
travel.
asking how she feels about being either the highest or the lowest. It depends on the industry that you're in.
Okay, so for specifically so I work travel for groups as well as for individuals. So my target market, so what's really talking about niches though, when it comes to highest and lowest. Higher return on investment if you go with the higher spenders, because you can actually do
Right.
less and your time is spent somewhere else, right? So I would say that if you're looking at if it's to be the lowest or the highest, I would say it's just about the return on investment of your personal time. And I own a franchise, so I just can't see the value of focusing on the big spenders and the low spenders when it comes to travel, because your big spenders might end up wanting something very cheap on very quickly on the left. You know what I mean? So, including groups. So, for example, one day somebody might want to turn around and do an Abercrombie and can't travel to Japan, spending $200,000-$300,000 on a group of 10. But at the same time, these same individuals come back and go, hey, I just want a 3-night cruise on Carnival for $200. So the focus on travel is really more about the client, not the price point. That's my take on how I also take education from. So you're asking about high and low, but as a franchise, I receive education continuously, and actually that's what I focus on. Is my franchise provides a library for me to receive training every Friday. Is what I dedicate my time to.
I think what I was reading was, and I understand what you're saying, was saying more so if you are going with the middle price, you have much more competition.
Yeah.
If you go the highest price, you're dealing with this niche of people who want luxury. If you're going with the lowest price, you're dealing with this niche of people who only have so much to spend. So that was the
I have a
takeaway.
question, and I think I understand exactly what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying, but go specific. But I think the question is, are you saying this is what we should do, or you're saying this is what franchises do, and it's part of their approach?
So everything we're talking about in the seminar today, I'm giving you examples of decision-making points and processes that franchises use that have led them to become as successful as they have.
Okay.
And what I'm urging you guys is to say, this is what franchises do. Is this applicable? Is this translatable into my context as a business owner?
So as a franchise, I have an opportunity to choose the cheapest or the wealthiest, is what I say. So from a franchise perspective, I have the ability to choose what best fits me as an individual owner and where the clientele that I wish. I know through education, through my franchise, that if I wish to have people that are in the lower level spending, that I need to produce higher turnaround. And yet, I know that if I want to create the niche market of the wealthy, I also know that I need to be the expert, not necessarily the best, but the expert at the topic of which they're talking about, which means I have to travel to Saigon or whatever. But then my franchise supports me to get me on those familiarization trips basically for free to get there. So they provide the education of that, so that's how. But as a franchise, they provide me the education to choose which direction best fits my personality for my individual owner
World
business.
Ventures,
Say again?
like World Ventures or Rovia.
I don't know what that means.
I was just asking if that's the franchise you were talking about.
No, my specific franchise is Cruise Planners, and I'm an American Express travel representative, so that's a franchise.
The simplest answer to your question for me would be the likelihood of you staying in business for the longest time is probably going to come when you target the middle market and you price accordingly. It's not the low end, it's not the super high end. As Dennis said, he made a good point. When you do the very high end of the market, you best be sure that you're the only one in that game and you're at the top of your game, because it's such a niche-y, specialized, individualized thing that you're doing, right? Otherwise you end up at the cheapest, at the lowest prices.
Question,
Yes.
away from the government contracting,
Yes.
but I just registered a trade company, O Lifestyle brand, that I plan to launch in 2018. It's going to be one-stop shopping for everything from clothing, household items, and stuff like that. Does that fit more into the niche of looking? Because I was I'm actually a client of SBDC.
Okay.
They mentor me, and they've been great help to me. I know it's men personally. So, but apart from that, when should I start? Because I did register the trades there. It's in my office, but I haven't even started any work on it as yet. I do have the logo and stuff like that, and the concept of know what I want the e-commerce site to look like. But I don't know where next to go with it actually at this moment, because I was saying the work is so much on the government contracting side for event planning, which takes you on the road and stuff like that. And I do have a creative director for Old Lifestyle brand, but she also stuck. Is like, where do we take this next? Do we go the investor route? Do we go the franchising route? You know, stuff like that. You know.
So that's a conversation that I think Charles will be more helpful to you on, number one. Two, I'm happy to chat with you offline. It's a much more individualized process because the specific focus is very different. You're very focused and very specific. Whether you're going to go the investor route or not, there are both sides of the. So last week I spoke at the World Bank, and there was a gentleman who was a VC. He was a venture capitalist, and the conversation rose about, well, when you're starting up, you have a concept. It's not a business yet. Do you go for VC funding straight up, or do you wait a couple of years? I'm of the opinion that you should not take money for as long as you possibly can. That's me. Others might feel differently.
I'm a strong believer of that.
Right? So that doesn't answer your question, but I kind of have to table that so that we can move on. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah. Ask yourself this. Whatever it is you're doing, can you spend less money doing it and still make the same amount of profit? Can you do what you're doing and downsize a little bit? Because what are you trying to do? You're trying to make your bottom line number bigger. This is a question that franchises think about all the time. All the time. Because as a franchisor, you have to make it really attractive for potential franchisees to buy your franchise. Because remember, you're paying me a royalty. I really have to make it worth your while to pay me the royalty and still you be able to make a killing. They think about this question all the time. None of you have asked me this yet. One of the biggest misconceptions about franchising is that a franchise costs $1 million. I've heard that a lot of times.
My dad bought a franchise, so.
Did he pay $1 million?
No.
It does not cost $1 million. There are franchises in every investment range that you can think of. A lot of times, people go the startup route where they start their business from scratch because they think, yeah, franchise would be great, but I can't afford it. Okay? Why don't you give you guys categories of businesses for you to start to wrap your mind around what you guys do, the businesses you have, and the kinds of franchises that are out there. Okay? Well, I kind of gave it away here. I was going to ask you, what is this range? Can somebody tell me what is the number one, the most expensive category in franchising? Nope. This is the second most expensive.
Hotel.
That's right.
What is it?
Hotels.
Okay.
Hotels. So at FranNet, we offer every single type of franchise that's out there except hotels.
Right.
Typically, clients don't have that kind of network. That's why, right? My business falls here. FranNet is what's considered a home-based business. What's a home-based business? I can actually operate my business out of my home. I have a designated space. That's my office. Now, I do have an office in Tyson's, but I didn't need to do that if I didn't want to do that. Typically, home-based businesses fall on the low end of the investment. In our part of the country especially, as you move into businesses that require locations, meaning real estate, meaning space, your price goes up. So if you, yes?
Is that the price to the franchisor, or that's the total overall investment that you're making?
The numbers here, they include two things. They include the franchise fee. Have you guys heard of the franchise fee? Do you know what that is? The franchise fee is a one-time fee that you pay the franchisor. You are in essence buying the right to operate as their, whatever their name is, the license. You're getting the license to operate as one of their franchisees. It's a one-time amount. This includes the franchise fee. It also includes the initial working capital for about 3 to 6 months. After you buy the business, you're going to have to do stuff to it to get it off the ground, right? That's your initial working capital. These are the categories. This range here, 100 to 250,000, this is where most of my clients fall. For them, it's a reasonable risk level. They're able to handle that. One of the things I want you guys to walk away with, you should not think that the size of your investment is a direct relation or a correlation to the return on your investment. You can actually make more money with a home-based business than you might with a restaurant. Restaurants have razor-sharp margins. It's also, by the way, a horrible lifestyle choice. It is. If you come to me and you say, Faizun, I have worked in government contracting for the last 20 years. I want to take it a little easy. Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, that's it. No weekends, no nights, no holidays. Well, my friend, a restaurant is out of the picture for you, right? These are the kinds of considerations that go into what sort of a business is best for you. It also includes your lifestyle goals, right? What you want to do. Some people are empty nesters. They want to feel re-engaged with society. They will get a business where they're in it 24/7. Different people, different needs, right? Another question that I want you guys to ask yourselves. The business that you have, whether it's a product or a service, is your business recession-proof? While you ponder this, I'm going to ask you guys, we are about an hour into it. Do you want to take a break for 5 minutes? Do you want me to power through? Break.
Great.
Great.
All right.
Great. I'm glad everybody had a chance to network during that break. Please continue to do that after the session's over. We're going to go into our second half, and I hope you've enjoyed it so far. I know Faizun has provided some great information. So again, please look through the materials that are provided there for you, both for what Faizun is doing through FranNet, and then also some of the events that we have coming up through the DCSBDC, including the event on June 7th. I just provided you guys a card for Buzz 365 Media. They've been our strategic partner for a bit, and they have also are webcasting this workshop today. So if you thought you might have missed a few things, after this is put up in the cloud or up on the internet, you'll have a chance to view the material again. So definitely taking advantage of that. But without further ado, I'd like to get back to our presenter, Ms. Faizun Kamal, and you're in for a treat.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles. All right. So let's jump back in where we left off. As you start to look at either starting a business or building up the business that you already have, think about whether the service or the product that you provide would be considered what's known as recession resistant or recession proof. What are some recession resistant businesses, franchise businesses that have done extremely well, right? One of the things that I'd like you guys to kind of walk away with today, when you think about businesses and specifically franchises, start to think of demographics. The most successful franchises out there, they were formed because they addressed the need of a particular segment in the population. So demographics, right? The first one, let's talk about when you think of the changes in the population demographically, think of baby boomers and think of millennials. Can you guys give me an example of a business, a franchise business, or just a business started from scratch that addresses the needs of both of these two demographic groups that are on two ends of the spectrum? Baby boomers, millennials.
All in one business?
Mm-hmm. It addresses both sectors, given their very specific needs that they have.
I'm going to say
It's-
travel, as I think that as well. Health and wellness is also a really big key to that.
Elder care.
Elder
Well, I guess
care,
not
yes,
so much for the millennials,
Yes.
but their parents.
yes,
For their parents.
absolutely. It's something that a lot of you probably use. I know I do. Residential cleaning,
Oh,
right?
that's right.
Baby boomers, They're physically probably not able to get up on a ladder and clean stuff.
Not true.
Uh-oh.
Maybe for most of them. Not all of them. Not all of them. Not all of
Get on
them.
the
I stand corrected. Not all of them. All right. Okay? So baby boomers. Millennials, they're never home. How are they going to clean their homes? Right? Residential cleaning as a franchised industry has absolutely exploded. So when I drive down my street to get to the main road, I see at least 4 to 6 different franchise businesses. They have the cars, they pull up to the, right? Merry Maids, Bright Maids, Something Maids, Maid, right? A bunch of them. These are all franchises, right? Demographics. My favorite, hair care. Some of the most successful franchises are in what? Basic industries. Industries that are considered to be essentials. This is a really good one. What do you think that is? Building essentials. So when the day ends, folks here at the DC chamber, they might have people who come around with carts. Who's cleaning the bathrooms? Who's cleaning the kitchen? Who's repairing? Who's putting in the bulbs that blow out? In all likelihood, probably a franchise that's doing that. Extremely lucrative. Why? Think of the number of commercial buildings you have just in downtown DC. Who's servicing those contracts? Right? Again, start thinking in terms of demographics, in terms of groups. Right? A third one are what are known as B2B. You're a franchise. You might offer IT services. You might offer marketing services to other small businesses in your community. It's a B2B service, not a B2C, right? Business to business. You mentioned WeWork, right? That's the concept of the shared space. It's become very popular in the last decade. There are franchises that provide shared workspaces that have done phenomenally well, right? Yeah. So again, look at the changes that are happening demographically in society and see if it's a need that you might be able to target, that you might be able to address. And these are examples of businesses that have done extremely well in the DMV. For your particular business, start to think about this. I will sometimes meet people who'll say, yeah, I want to start a business, but I don't really know what. Everything's already being done, right? Everything's already being taken care of. Well, maybe not. Professionals in every industry still need training, continuing education. There are franchises that offer leadership training, business coaching, that have done very, very well. There are people who want quality education for their children. Where I live, these are young families with young growing families, and a lot of them will send their children to these various tutoring places. What are some of the ones you have seen? Give me some names. Kumon, Sylvan, Huntington. What do you think these all are? You guessed it, franchises, right? Particularly when the economy is not doing too well. Are you that ready to up and leave and get another house? Maybe not. You continue living in the house that you're in, but you make repairs to it. Residential repairs are one of the fastest growing franchise categories in the world. Okay? And so on. These are all examples of businesses. They thrive no matter what the economic condition is. Does yours do the same? Think about that. Going back to what we started out with, outsourcing, right? How do you be in 5 places at the same time? Can you hire an employee? And can you hire an employee and teach them what they need to do in your absence? Can you do that? Is it simple enough? Franchises work because they can be set up, they can be scaled, they can be situated in any location geographically, and you can put employees in place to take care of what it is you need to take care of. But you can only do that if your business model is simple enough. Is your business model simple enough? Can you hire employees and train them to do what you're doing when you're not there? I mentioned this earlier a couple of times. A franchising is not about a product. A franchising is not about a service. A franchising is all about what? I like it. You all have been listening. Proven systematic approach to starting, but more importantly, of staying in business. Put yourself here. The business that you run, can you check off these things? Do you have the requisite industry experience to be an expert at what you do? Is your business model simple enough? If it's not simple, it sucks. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. When I describe a particular franchise or a business to a client, I have to be able to explain it very simply. If I can't, it's not a good business model. Because if it's not a simple business model, how are you teaching employees to do what you do? Right? One of the best things, and Dennis, who's also a franchisee, will attest to this, one of the best things about a franchise is you are in business for yourself, but you are never in business by yourself. I have the support of my corporate team behind me all the time. We have 2 conferences at FranNet, one in the spring, one in the fall. I have not yet missed a single one. I have never yet come away from a conference where I did not learn something new. Every single time, right? Initial training and ongoing support. One of the key things that I'm sure a lot of you, if not all of you, have heard is that business ownership can be a very lonely experience, right? You're in it by yourself. You may have some friends who are also business owners, but maybe not, right? Who do you commiserate with? When you run into a problem, who do you tap on and say, hey, Dennis, I ran into this. What are you doing? Somebody who can relate to you. This one here, name recognition, is a funny one because I think it's a double-edged sword. It can cut both ways, right? There are advantages to being in a franchise or in a business that does not yet have name recognition. Why do you think that is?
People don't have considered ideas of what it is that you do.
That's one good point. Absolutely. No, not necessarily. No.
Your competition doesn't know value yet.
That's a good one. I haven't thought of it quite like that. That's a good one.
No, I'm saying less expensive for you to buy into.
Not necessarily. Nope. Do you guys remember that incident that happened about a year and a half ago? Oh my God. The subway footlong is actually not a foot long? You guys remember that? Right? What happened to the company? What happened to their reputation? Got flushed down the you know what? Right? It can cut both ways. There are a lot of people who have never heard of FranNet. But if you have anything at all to do with franchising, you probably have. Cuts both ways, right? Systems. Systems, 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 every single time. What do you have in place? Can you make it stronger? Think about tactical ways in which you can make your existing system stronger, right? You don't have to recreate the wheel. Glean, beg, steal, borrow, plagiarize, whatever you need to do. It's allowed. It's all allowed, right? Strengthen your systems. And then ultimately, teamwork. Again, goes back to the point of entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey sometimes. With a franchise, you're not lonely. You have a group of other franchisees that you can call on for support, emotional, moral, whatever, right? Let's talk about this a little bit. For those of you who own a business and feel completely overwhelmed with everything that you have to do every single day, do you ever think about, oh my gosh, could I run this business and not have to be there 24/7? 7 days a week? Has the thought crossed your mind? Yeah, it's very attractive, isn't it? There are a particular set of franchises, particular set of business models that are known as semi-absentee franchises. As the name suggests, these are business models. The first couple of months as the owner of the business, you do what you need to do to ramp it up. Once the business is humming along nicely, you put in a manager who takes care of the day-to-day, and you take a step back. I have a lot of clients who come to me. They love their jobs. They love their bosses, in fact. They want to continue, but they have a nice nest egg, and they don't want to be gathering 0.001% interest rate at Bank of America or other banks that shall remain nameless, right? They want to invest it a little bit more wisely. And they say, could we run a business Could we buy a business that we can put in place and somebody comes in and runs it for us so that it becomes an additional stream of revenue? And the answer is yes. So here's the question that I have for all of you, because the point is not for you to work in your business till the day you die. Work on the business, grow it, hand it off, so that you then free yourself up to start a second business, to do something else. Can you do this? Ask yourself that. This is a key question that franchisors ask. Why do you think that is the case? To make their business model appealing to the most amount of people in the population. I'll give you an example. In the non-medical in-home senior care industry, so these are basically franchises that provide non-medical support for seniors so that they can age in place. So you might not want your parent to go off to a nursing home. You want to keep them at home. But every single day, a nurse or some certified health professional comes in and, does what they need to do. These are businesses that can be run semi-absentee. They can also be run as a full-time owner-operator. For the longest time, they could not be run semi-absentee. And the franchises realized that they were losing a lot of clients, potential franchisees. And so they tweaked their business model. And now you have that industry that is open to both semi-absentee owners as well as full-time owner-operators. Right?
So what was the tweak?
The tweak was in the number of hours that was required to scale up the business. The tweak was in the kinds of employees that you could now hire. It was more restrictive before. Anytime you get into the healthcare space, remember you're now talking about licenses, right? Every particular state has a certain number of licenses. Once they're sold out, it's maxed out, it's gone, right? They were running into issues of where potential franchisees wanted to open in DC, but they couldn't because all the licenses were gone. And so they made tweaks to the business model that allowed franchisees to come in and hire professionals where they did not need to get that particular license. Right? Again, middle market, right? Open yourself up to the greatest amount of customers that you possibly can. These are examples of semi-absentee businesses. So Chad, WeWork, an example of a shared workspace, right? You as the business owner, as the franchisee, you lease a building, and your responsibility as the business owner is you now go out and about in your community, you talk to other small businesses who want office space, but they don't want to pay a fixed monthly amount. Maybe they want to pay as you go, right? Different business models out there. Additional stream of revenue. Keep your day job, right? Again, the question to ask yourself is what you're doing right now, at some point, if you start to make the changes now, can you make it semi-absentee? Where you can step back a little bit and the business still continues to make money, because ultimately that's what you're trying to do. All right, any questions? Okay. Let's talk a little bit about some of the trends that we have seen in, I would say, the last 10, 15 years in the franchising world. In terms of industry. So Frank hit on the first one, healthcare, right? Why healthcare? Again, changes in the demographic, changes in the population, baby boomers, right? A lot of folks do not want to be shipped off to nursing homes. They want to stay at home. A franchising industry has grown up around that. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Okay? Fitness and wellness. Primarily, I would say, pushed forward by the millennials. There's a focus on healthy lifestyles, healthy eating, being active, and you see a lot of gyms, and a lot of the gyms out there today, they're franchises. They have brought the business model down to a science in terms of the square feet, the amount of space that's required, the number of equipments, the kinds of equipments, the number of customers that you need, paying customers that you need to be able to hit break even. These are the kinds of things that franchises look at. Shared space. The office that I have in Tyson's, I pay money to a franchise. They own that space, right? very lucrative. My favorite, we talked about children's hair care. We talked about hair care salons geared towards just men, right? Different demographics. The focus these days is to make it more experiential. There's a particular franchise we have in our inventory. They will card you, they will ask you for your age, but when you come in, you get a can of beer and you get a hot towel treatment at the end of your haircut. Right? They're focusing on the experience. And then lastly, what is probably the most well-known category in franchising, looking at food, not so much fast food, but the focus now being, you know, all the restaurants you go to where you walk in with an empty bowl and they say, pick your protein, pick your carb, pick your this, that, and the other. Authentic and healthy. Customize. The focus on creating your own thing, right? Customizing it. These we have seen are the top 5 industries where franchising has exploded. Very, very successful models. Questions? Yes.
I have a quick question. You
Yes.
mentioned, franchising is, I guess, tailor-made for mid-market. Do you have an example of a service-based franchise that caters to the high end of the market?
Service-based franchise
Yeah.
that caters to the high end of the market? No. No. Because if it caters to the high end of the market, then it's not a franchise. Then it's just a regular company. With a franchise, your business model is intended to get the maximum number of customers in your population. And so you will always find it's never a top of the road in terms of quality and price. It's always middle of the road. Think about it. Any product or service that you have bought or ever used from a franchise, is it the absolute superb one that you can get if you walked into a Barney's or a Saks? You'd probably get, if it's a product, you would get one that's maybe 50 times better and more pricier. But then you are shrinking the potential population of customers that you have. So no.
So on the franchise perspective, as far as you say upper end, I just want to take like a minor key. I just take a travel industry, for example, but so your location will oftentimes determine, but as a franchise, I see and I've been taught that higher income clients are more like a niche, based because they have certain demands, like in a Meineke or like a car dealership. It's based on your location and the type of tires that you're selling.
Right.
So that's already, but if that's the niche you want to do is to only sell high-end tires, that's a niche that you wish to target. That's a target market. And it's up to you as a franchisee to evaluate the result of that marketing,
Yeah.
right? But the franchise provides the education, the opportunity, the support, the network, so that you can lean off the other Meineke or the other whatever to see if that's what you're working on. But location. But you're right. So as a franchise, no one's telling me my franchise is only just a high-end clients. It's up to me to determine, based on my independently owned and operated franchise, how I wish to operate. What do I want to sell? What do I want to provide? And because even if you go to any franchise, I mean, if I want to cut hair, but if somehow if I want to niche, sell those core products to just for Black women, right, African American hair, well, that's up to me if that's how I want to choose myself, how I want to cater my market, and that goes into marketing support that you do get from your franchise. Because you have a lot of people that will be doing it with you.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, I just asked that because I think that the more you serve only the high end, like you said, they want specialized stuff. You can tailor you can standardize fewer things.
So a good example, think of the financial advisory services industry. Think of a company like Morgan Stanley. They don't work with everyone. Think of a company like Edward Jones. They have more of a franchising model. We don't need you to have $1 million. We know you want to get there, but let us work with you now where you are, and we'll grow with you. The model is, I would say, quite a bit different than a Morgan Stanley, right? Again, it's the population you're targeting. Morgan Stanley is very clear who they want to target, right? So these are the kind of distinctions you want to keep in your mind. Again, you're trying to reach the maximum number of people you can, and therefore your product is middle of the road, price and quality wise, always. With a franchise, it all goes back to the playbook. you are expected to operate within the limits of your playbook. Why? Because we know we have franchisees across the country who have done this and it's been proven and they're making money. Follow the playbook and you'll make money, right? You don't go outside of the parameters. One of the key things, we're actually going to get into that, and I'm looking at the time, so I'm going to move through very quickly here if it's okay with you guys. But what I wanted to do, there are really only 3 ways in which you can begin a business. You can start a business from scratch, as some of you have done. You can decide to buy an existing business from its current owner and take over the business and start running it, or you could start a franchise. I was going to go through all of these, but I won't go into details into every single point. But I would say a startup business, tell my clients, this is the option for you if you think you're the classic entrepreneur. Are you a Mark Zuckerberg? You want to do your own thing. You might want to create a whole new product category or a service category. You want to be your own boss. You want to make all the rules. You want to set all the systems. You want to keep all the profits. No royalties to anyone. Yeah? Then this is the best option for you. The flip side of it is that startup businesses have the highest rates of failures. Don't they, Charles?
Yeah.
Census Bureau statistics. Census Bureau statistics. If you compare a franchise business and a non-franchise business, at the end of the first 2 years, a franchised business that was started and a non-franchise business that was started at the same time, after 2 years, 94% of franchises and 84% of startup businesses, non-franchised, are still in existence. What do you think the number goes down to after 5 years? 94 and 84. Franchise, non-franchise. The franchise number goes down to 92. The non-franchise number goes down to 50. Fully 50% of all startup businesses will disappear in 5 years. Right? As a result, because they have the highest failure rate, what are your chances of getting a loan from the bank? And Charles can attest to this better than I can.
Very high.
Why? Because you're an unproven commodity. We don't know you. You represent one of the highest risk rates for us. So no, you will not get a loan. Right? Pros and cons of a startup. Move on. There's an existing business. You don't want to start with a clean slate, right? You want to have some customers. You want to have some income coming in. On the face of it, it's a great idea, right? You have all of this stuff. You could have a location, customers, a book of business. You could have some employees in place. You could have some systems in place. So it's not a bad thing. However, the biggest danger to doing this is if I'm selling my business to Felipe, how likely do you think it is that I will be 100% honest with him about why I'm selling it?
You would be.
With you, I probably would. Yeah, okay, so that's a bad example. Right? No, you wouldn't. You will present your business in the best possible light. So Felipe here is super excited. He just toured my business. He saw my rock star employee who makes everything run, and he is ready to begin. However, what Felipe does not know is Dennis is loyal to me. As soon as I sell my business to Felipe, guess what he does? He ups and leaves. But he doesn't know that. Felipe is very excited about buying my business, but what he doesn't know is that within a month of buying my business, my biggest competitor is setting up shop next door. Right? You have to almost be a sleuth. You have to be a detective to figure out why is this person selling their business. Have you heard of businesses that have 2 sets of books? Yes, some of you laugh, some of you snicker. It's a reality. What numbers are you looking at? Why is this important? Because your cash flow determines the amount of money you're paying to buy that business. And if it isn't there, what are you paying for? Right? Hidden seller motives. We talked about that, right? If this was a business that wasn't doing super well, okay, middle of the road, because of that, they're probably carrying a higher debt service. You guys know what that is? They're probably paying more on a loan, a higher interest rate, than a business who has better credit than they do. You're going to be shouldering that. In all cases, in almost every case, if it's not a franchise business, what do? You run into a business that has very poor training systems, that has very poor systems in place, because the owner never did it. Right? But then, on the flip side, here are some of the pros. So I present this to you to say, whatever you decide to do, walk into it with your eyes open. Every option has pros and cons. Let's go through this very quickly. Have any of you ever heard of a franchise being referred to as a business in a box? Yeah, it's a business in a box. Here's the box. You've given me a check, I've given you the box. The box has all the instructions for you to be successful at this. These are the instructions, the manuals, right? Systems and support. By the way, one of the other reasons why you pay a royalty, a quicker startup, a shorter ramp-up time. Every single time. You will get to market that much quickly with a franchise. Talked about the training. We talked about the support that you get, the continued consulting relationship with your corporate team, right? They step in when you have issues. This is perhaps one of the most important things of a franchise. The industry that I'm in, it's a very highly regulated industry, right? The Federal Trade Commission oversees franchising as a whole. One of the key things that every franchise who's required to be in good standing with the government, they're required to file what's known as an FDD. Have any of you heard about this? You two are not allowed to answer. They've heard of this before. Franchise disclosure document, exactly. It's a legal tome. It basically is a document that the franchisor is required to file every single year with the government. It goes through a list of any outstanding legal liabilities against them, any court cases against them, have they ever declared bankruptcy, what do their management team look like, but perhaps most importantly, for purposes of those people who are looking to invest in a franchise, it gives you a comprehensive list of any, bless you, any and all franchisee who has ever bought into that system, past and present. Right? As you go through the franchise search process, and I'll get into this a little bit more, you are actually expected to make calls to existing franchisees because you're trying to learn, can I do what they're doing, and can I do what they're doing and be successful? Right? As with anything else, there are a lot of cons. There are many people who attend my seminars who say, you know what, I have had it with having a boss. I never, ever, ever, ever want to have a boss ever again. And I say, that's fantastic. Then you would be a sucky franchisee. This is not the option for you, and I have 10 minutes. Usually there's a sales goal. So yeah, you're not completely your own boss. You have a sales goal that you have to meet. Some people will say, well, why am I going to give my money away? Well, what are you giving it up for? What are you getting in return, right? Protected territories. I work only in Virginia and DC. So what I'm doing right now, I can't go to Maryland and do that. Conversely, my colleague in Maryland, he can't come to DC and Virginia and do this. I have a protected region. No one plays in my sandbox and vice versa. That can be a very good thing. I sign a franchise agreement. A lot of people don't want to do that. It's a legal agreement. You have to be able to abide by it, right? And then, kind of along with the name recognition, your franchisor's problems can in turn become yours if it's a very well-known brand. Okay, so very quickly, if you are looking at a franchise, understand that there are more than 3,100 franchises in the US right now, in more than 90 different categories. But not all are available in the DC market, DC Virginia market. We talked about healthcare. Not all have licenses. You might say, I have always wanted to own an in-home healthcare franchise ever since I was 5 years old. Well, that's tough because all the licenses are sold out. Unless you up and move to another state, you won't be able to do it here, right? So you have to find out, is it available? Do they have a track record, a good track record, right? That's fairly easy to find out. And then perhaps most importantly, every franchise has different outcomes. The business model allows you to do certain things and not others. What is your personal situation? What are your personal, professional, lifestyle, financial goals that you're trying to achieve through the franchise? You have to figure that out. And there's a lot of choices, right? For lack of a better word, I call this my formula. This is what I use to place my clients. Is that franchise making money here? How many franchisees do they have? Have they done well? Have any of those franchisees closed down shop and left? If so, why? Can that franchise legally open in the DMV? Is it even available? There are many franchises, because of how successful they have been, they're no longer available. They're fully sold out. But this is the most important piece of it, and it's fit. At the end of the day, one of the biggest reasons that a lot of people will fail at the business that they have started or the business that they have bought is because there was never a fit between who they are and what the business model required. So I'll use a simple example. One of my key responsibilities as a FranNet business owner is that I'm expected to do this. Walk into a room full of strangers, some strangers, and be able to engage with you, right? Now, the kind of person, the thought of meeting a total stranger made me want to vomit all over myself. Do you think I would be successful at this? Simplistic example, but the point is the fit has got to be there. It has got to be there, okay? And that'll be your highest likelihood of success. So, are you guys still comfortable with what you're doing, or do you want to change course? You still want to go independent, or do you want to open a franchise? All right. If it's the latter, here's the process that I use. Again, assessing goals and skills, right? I am trying to understand who you as an individual are. What are your strengths? What are your skill sets? But perhaps more importantly, what are the things that you really suck at? Because there's something that we all suck at, right? What are the things you don't want to do? Because there are businesses where you wouldn't have to do those things. Wouldn't you want one of those? Versus having to do something every single day that you really don't like. I take an inventory of my client's goals and skills. The first step, it's an online assessment that the client fills out. It's a 30-minute online assessment. And once I get the results, if everything checks out, I start building your personalized business model. Does anybody know what a business model is? It's not a business plan. A business model is, think of it as a blank sheet of paper. On that sheet of paper, I sit down with you, Frank, and I say, Frank, when you think of starting your own business, list down, tell me every single thing you would want in that business. It's your wish list. And I'm going to say to you, Frank, of the 100 things you've given me, would you be okay if I got you 95 of those? That's literally what I do. Once I've built out the personal business models, and these are some of the things we look at, right? We've all done different things in our lives. What are those big buckets of transferable skills that I can use? Dennis here, he's really good at logistics. He is a logistics ninja. Okay, let's look and find a business that allows him to use that skill set. With a franchise, a misconception that people have, they think they have to go back to school. And I say, no, you don't. No, you don't. If you've made it this far, you know you have some skill set. Right? Let's use those. Once we've built the business model, and here are a couple of things that I actually tell clients. The client who bought the Meineke. Okay, so this is a friend I had in business school. He came to me after he found out what I did with FranNet. And he said, you know, Faizun, we were in business school about 7-10 years ago, and you don't know this, but I have been looking at franchises for the last 10 years. And I said, okay. So he says, no, I've been looking, I've been investigating, I've been searching, I've been researching. And I said, oh, 10 years. That's a long timeline. He said, yes, because it's a large enough investment. I said, yes, but don't you think you should have been building equity in your business for the last 10 years and not searching for it? So tell me what you've been looking at. Oh, I've only been looking at automotive franchises. So I asked him my favorite question. I said, why? Well, ever since I was a little boy, I've always loved tinkering underneath the hoods of cars. I said, okay. So when you buy a Meineke or a Jiffy Lube or a Mako, as the business owner, are you going underneath the hoods of your customers' cars? Separate the function of the business from what you like to do. That's what he liked to do, but that is not what he was going to be doing as a business owner. Now, he did end up buying a Meineke, so we shall see if he does indeed go under the hoods of customers' cars. Okay, this is the process. Once I have your assessment and I have your business model, I take the two and I go into my inventory and I pick out 3 businesses for you that most closely approximate what you have told me you want from your business. I work with clients between 45 to 90 days. The first step is I'm going to put you in touch with the franchises. You will talk to them and you will receive the FDD that has the list of contacts of franchisees. You will validate. This part of the process is called validation. Through phone calls, sometimes in-person meetings, you will validate with the franchisees. So the franchisor told me they're going to give me A, B, and C. Is that really true? Is that what you've been getting? What has your experience been like, right? You ask them the hard questions. By the way, every single week, the client and you and I will have a call. And I will ask you, tell me what homework you did. Who did you speak to? What did you learn, right? With every week, with the research that you're doing, think of it as a funnel. When I begin with you, we are at the top of the funnel. I don't know anything about you. As the process moves on, I narrow and I refine so I can find you your perfect fit business. You validate with the franchisees. You make a visit to the franchisor's corporate headquarters. If everything checks out, you get a franchise agreement in hand. I then tell you, pump your brakes, not yet. I want you to go check out, go with the franchise agreement and get it checked out by a franchise attorney. If you have a lawyer that you work with now, that person does not work. You want somebody who specializes in franchises. If everything checks out with that, you make a decision to buy and you officially become a franchisee. And that's where your research process, your search process ends. These are some ways in which you can use existing finances that you might have, or other different ways in which you can get financing for your business. This is the key thing. I cannot work with clients who have any less than $50,000 in liquidity. The liquidity can be cash, sitting in a cash or savings or checking account. You could also make that available from a 401k rollover. There are different ways in which you can do that. And that's all I have, folks.